Welcome everyone to the Pantheon of M. I am your host Ray, and today we're looking at Captain America: Winter Soldier, the 2014 film starring Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson and Samuel L. Jackson. Let's get into some primary numbers, a little useless trivia, starting with number 5 and going back, counting down to number 1. This is the 5th film for Samuel L. Jackson playing the role of Nick Fury. For number 3, this is the 3rd time both Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson has played the roles or the coveted roles, and this is the 3rd entrance for the writers, Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. They wrote the entire trilogy of Captain America films, starting with First Avengers, the Joe Johnson movie, and then they went on to do the contributing writer to Thor: Dark World. They didn't really write that; they just helped shape it because there was a lot of writers associated with that. And this would be their 3rd film. They would go on to do Civil War, and they would work with the directors, who, by the way, this is their first time. Number one, working with the MCU. That is the Russo brothers. This is their first time in this. And besides Josh Whedon, who's done more than one film, he's done 2. The Russo brothers would go on to do 4 films, and they'd be working closely with McFeely and Marcus for Civil War, and they would go on to do both Infinity War and Endgame. And each film, arguably, you can say gets better and expansive and better than its predecessor, and is amazing. And after seeing Endgame, you can argue where does the ranking of Winter Soldier ends up? Is it still in the top 10? It's up to you. It's all subjective, but it's still a wonderful piece, and it's up there with Dark Knight and Spider-Man 2 as being one of the best well-written stories based on comic books. It is, because this is not just a superhero film. It is a spy espionage film. It is political thriller, social commentary involved in this, but this is really one of the extraordinary films and a story of Captain America being a man out of the time and seeing the discrepancies of what goes on, and a lot of changes goes along the way, but his ideals remain the same. He does the right thing. He always does the right thing, even if it's not the most popular of opinions. He holds steadfast in his ideals, and it's one of the most remarkable characteristics and journeys he does in the series from beginning to the end game. So with that, let's go to my partner Evie and let's get his reviews or his summary of Captain America: Winter Soldier.
How are you, man?
Good, good. So today we're talking about Winter Soldier. It's the second installment to Captain America. So this was I'm going to say straight off the bat, going into it, it wasn't what I expected it to be when I saw this in theaters. To review it, it's going to be a very complicated review because there's a lot of moving parts to it. So just to start off, what are your thoughts of the movie going into it?
Loved it. It was awesome. Action, drama, everything, dude. Everything.
For me personally, the thing that I picked up on this go round was more of Samuel L. Jackson's role in the movie.
Okay.
And for me, like what I didn't pick up on when I saw it in the theater, the thing I learned watching it from a second time around was that Fury he hired Batroc on the ship. I didn't realize that until there's a line that Black Widow says to Rogers about the mission, that because it's a Hydra, it's holding Hydra information, so Hydra wouldn't allow them to infiltrate their own ship, right? So it was Fury because he suspected stuff about the Project Insight. He hired Batroc to take over the ship so he could have a crew to go in there and to have Black Widow retrieve the information on their data.
Wow.
Because the encryption that which we'll find out later on, it was Artem Zoloff's algorithm to check on the satellite dish for insight.
Right.
Now the thing that I didn't even pick up because it had the components to install into the satellite dishes for insight.
Yeah.
So that's how he knew there was something wrong with it. And when he couldn't hack the access to the file, he knew something was wrong. I didn't realize how layered this actually, how much layering there was in this film, and this kind of gave Pearson reasons to like charge or go after Steve Rogers, and they could have flipped it because if they knew that it was Fury who went after the ship who caused the hijacking,
Right.
they could then there's grounds for treason.
Oh, okay.
Right, so because it's never clear like why would they charge Rogers for like such a severe act of treason and everyone going after him without probable cause, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that I didn't even pick up on that. That was if he had to use an excuse to do that, that was the reason for it. So I'm like, oh my gosh, it blew my mind when I saw this in theaters. So I'm like, oh my god, I saw this on a retake. So that was really cool. And it's only given to you in one line that Black Widow gives to Steve that that was her mission to go into it, and that was why. So,
Okay.
but for you, because this is your second time watching it, like I'm assuming, right? Like from
Yeah, second, third, I don't know a lot.
so because every time you see a film, you learn something new. So what did you learn on your second time watching this film?
I totally forgot that um the guy who actually made the program Zolt,
Mm-hmm.
what's his name? I forget.
Oh,
But
Arnim Zoloff.
yeah,
Yeah.
he put his um consciousness into the system, and I thought that was really good, interesting. I totally forgot about that part. You
Right.
know,
Right.
yeah, it was lots of surprises in it.
The very first time you see Arnim Zoloff, it's kind of like a foreshadowing of the character.
Oh
It's
yeah,
right. It's that you see him from a point of view of a computer screen, so it's kind of a little foreshadowing.
oh,
So that was
right.
really cool. So, but this is where like it was getting close to the end of the season for Shield, and I was getting kind of disappointed with the storyline altogether. But then when they actually meshed the story, like the aftermath, with
Hmm.
the series,
Right.
it piqued my interest on the series, and it piqued my interest in watching Captain America and going in, especially after being. I wasn't disappointed, but a little like let down of seeing Iron Man 3. Uh,
Okay.
this kind of like, oh my gosh, this is like deep. This is not like a simple.
Yeah, and it gave a lot of history of strike. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I
Mhm.
enjoyed it. And the time went so fast, like watching it.
Yeah, it's just 2 hours and 20 minutes, right? Like it's
Yeah,
a long film.
but
And,
but time just flew by, which was amazing.
mhm. Yep.
Yeah,
And it's the first film from the Russo brothers. Um, what do you think of GSP in the movie?
I was shocked. And at first I'm thinking, is that GSP? And I'm like, cool. He was pretty good in it. He can fight.
Oh yeah, was he could? No, I was more like, oh wow, he could actually act. And then he does that commercial for insurance, that insurance commercial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
know.
he has I think he has a great comedic timing as well as like as being a relatively good actor. You know.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
yeah. And I know when they debuted Thor: Dark World, they had a special screen, a special like a 5-minute package of Winter Soldier to see in screens for people who had like a special access,
Oh,
and it was the entire sequence of the elevators fight.
oh, okay.
So yeah, and that got people really excited to see Winter Soldier coming up. So as a preview. So in that sense, I think the Russo brothers really. I think they tipped their hand knowing that this is going to lead into something much more, something exciting. And with Endgame, looking at the lens through Endgame, seeing how Captain America uses that in the future to his advantage is
Yeah,
brilliant. Yeah. So, uh,
cool.
so speaking of Endgame, what things did you pick up on in this film now that you saw were breadcrumbs for the Endgame movie?
For the end game, this kind of gave me something where I could place Agent Carter,
Mhm.
and so I got it regarding like the end of it,
Right.
and that they dated or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. It's a good touch for me, so I could understand.
Yeah, I agree. And the only thing, what I learned from that scene too was that I forgotten that it was Peggy and Howard Stark founded Shield. They were the
Yeah.
founders of Shield, and the headquarters, the what's it called, Triskelion location, which is in Washington D.C. Because I always thought the only there was a secret organization and they only existed in the sky with this helicarrier, but there was an actual location, like a headquarters for Shield, and that's what that's what Howard Stark created. And
Yeah.
So I was like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. So he created his first. That was like the first Stark Towers before there were Stark Towers, and
Yeah.
I didn't even pick up on that until I saw this film.
Well, thanks, Evie. Well, that concludes our show. But before we go, we ask you to hit subscribe down below. You can hit the little bell in the corner for notification. That allows you to do when our new show gets up and running. We usually air our show every Fridays at noon. You can catch our show here on YouTube channel. And with that, on behalf of Evie and myself, we will see you next week. We are going to be reviewing the final episodes of Season 1 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It is the aftermath of what took place at the end of A Winter Soldier. So it's going to be the final episodes of how Hydra has now affected S.H.I.E.L.D. and how that ripple effect carries on. And so with that, on behalf of Evie and myself, we'll see you next week. Take care.